Oliver, back at it again. Can't get enough of each other, I guess.
Yeah, I'm back in. Still haven't got a haircut, so I got a new hat to sort of tide me over until the new haircut comes.
There we go. I mean, so everyone has a reason to watch the next one. Make sure you catch Oliver's haircut,
Might be the
or a new
fresh
hat
trim
will just
episode.
join
Will
them.
it be? Or will it be another hat? I don't know.
Exactly. Well, excited for this one and excited to have uh, another really cool guest in the ops space. We were chatting before the episode and we made the joke like, who finds ops exciting? And it's seemingly everyone we invite on this pod because, it's their life's work. So you'd hope so. But I'll let them introduce themselves. So, Kat, please tell the audience who you are and what you do.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, I'm Kat Faris. I am the Director of Wholesale Operations at Ridge. I have approximately, I guess, 15 to 20 years of operations experience across multiple functions within operations, whether it be wholesale operations, D2C, even in-store retail, inventory management, all across the board. So this role at Ridge is my next foray into operations, and it's been really exciting. So yeah.
Uh, I can only imagine the changes you've seen as you kind of started at Ridge to now and kind of where you have taken some of the wholesale initiatives. So uh, maybe talk us through kind of what your journey has been, either pre-Ridge and then coming into Ridge, kind of some of the changes you saw, like what's your experience working in wholesale and getting D2C brands working with wholesale retailers?
Yeah, I always think it's a fun relationship. I've been sort of on the side of where it's a very deeply wholesale company, and their roots are in wholesale. I always tell people this: wholesale is really sort of old school. It's really sort of contingent upon the relationships that you build with your trading partners and your sales team and your sales ops teams, and sort of building out those relationships with across whether it's sales and ops and sort of looping it all back together. Coming into Ridge, I was actually running customer operations and operations for another startup where solely was B2B. And there was really, yes, we did have a digital arm of the business, but it was much smaller in consideration to the rest of the wholesale business that we had. And, coming into Ridge, which is absolutely the reverse, right? It's a very, robust, D2C company. You can buy their brand basically anywhere online. So coming into, a much smaller wholesale environment, it was kind of fun. You sort of get an opportunity coming into something that's still a fledgling, that's still sort of the little brother or sister to the larger company, and you really get an opportunity to look at the business holistically and actually make really strategic decisions that then trickle down to the operations and the tactical movements that need to be done to make it run effectively. When you talk about wholesale, you obviously have the sales functions, your account managers, your sales operations functions, but you do have ops. And it is an ops role that is deeply tied to the ability to sort of understand technical integration. EDI has been around forever. There hasn't been much change, right? I always tell people this. I'm like, an 850 has been an 850 for, I think, a millennia now. If you're listening to this and you don't know what an 850 is, it's a purchase order that's coming in from your trading partner. But yeah, it's sort of like these things have been around forever. But when you don't have those roots and you don't have that foundation, how do you take sort of those integrations and that technical understanding and sort of get people excited about what wholesale really is? And so that's what I've really been doing. I started with Ridge in basically the end of October 2024. So I haven't even been with the company a year yet. And there's already been quite a bit of change.
I think you touched on a lot of interesting points. I mean, the one that excites me to talk about because I think it is uh, something that D2C brands who move into wholesale kind of struggle with, to be transparent, is the collaboration you mentioned between the different roles when you're working in the B2B world. So how do you approach that? Where does your kind of, as the ops leader in this space, where does your purview start, stop? How do you collaborate with the different teams that uh, you have to work with in this space.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. There's a lot of internal workings and machinations that you have to consider when you really launch a wholesale arm of your business with a brand. Um, how digital may run their business in terms of when they launch product, when they have newness, when they're reordering. You have to sort of wholesale has to then be ingratiated sort of into that calendar, if you will, right? So there are a lot of internal discussions about, well, our certain trading partner or this account, they never break sale or they break sale during this time or they don't want markdowns and each one of them is an individual. They're all like children, right? They all have different personalities. They all have different requirements. I'll use that word a lot in terms of each account. And I think when you start to onboard in a wholesale environment, when you've been basically a D2C brand, you sort of have to take a step back and think, how do I begin to work with, I wouldn't call it a limitation, but it's more so just, it's a business rule. If I'm going to bring on accounts, there are certain things that they're going to require, whether it's the technical integration piece, whether it's, how do we handle their markdowns? How do we handle returns? How do we sort of have this ebb and flow with each of them? And I think it's very, very interesting. There's a lot of vendor management too. I mean, even from my perspective as an operations leader, I'm talking to accounts, I think just as much sometimes as sales is, but on the flip side of the coin, right? When I onboard a partner, I'm like, oh, I need their routing guide. Oh, I need their supplier guide information. Oh, I need to know if we're going to route them. I need to know if we're going to use, FedEx or if we're what, all of the questions that I'm going to have. What's their case packs? What are their requirements? And I think, it's quite a different business. It's same, but different, right? I mean, you're always going to have an order, you're always going to have a shipment, and you're always going to have an invoice, right? Those are sort of the three things that you're going to have across like every business, right? Like in terms of what we're doing. But, wholesale adds a flair. Wholesale adds a little spin on what does it mean to do business with retailers and what does it mean to do business with those partners. And it is, how do you keep them happy? We'll touch on it, I'm sure we'll get to it, but how do you avoid chargebacks? And what is the evil word of chargeback, right? Like, I mean, essentially you can really start to dig into that and it could really hurt your business. So how do you ensure that as you're wooing your partners and as you're sort of onboarding, and if you're onboarding them EDI, if they're a non-EDI vendor, are they dropship? Sort of asking yourself all these questions about these partners that you're sort of bringing onto your orbit, because there's a goal of mutually beneficial relationship between you. How do you make sure that you continue to grow that? So yeah, it's a lot of relationship building. It's a lot of what I would consider experiential in service, even on the operations side, because you're consistently having to reach out to people and say, this invoice went out with the wrong price. I'm going to need to fix it. Is it within my boundaries so I don't get a charge back? Because you have to consider that, because it could be an invoice for $10,000, but the chargeback could be for $2,000. I mean, it's mind-boggling when you sit and think about how chargebacks can hit you.
Yeah, how do you even go about like systemizing a lot of that? Like it's not standard business data. Like if they're coming through as an EDI trading partner, I'm assuming there's like setup, configuration, everything else. But you've covered like 15, 20 different data points now that wouldn't naturally sit in your ERP. But they're so critical to people making business decisions. How do you operationalize that stuff?
It's about, I think it's about framework first. When you sort of decide as a business to launch into wholesale, and if I was to start, right, if I was to say, I'm going to do wholesale, okay, I think my first thoughts of how do I do this, because we're going to touch on something. Every single account that you have does have different requirements, right? It's same, but different. First thing I would do is really think about inventory management. How am I going to manage that? And what EDI capabilities do I need to have? And those are really, I think, the first things that I would always start with. It's infrastructure integrity to be able to build out how you want to move forward. That's how I think about it first. The second thing I think about is, and I'm not on the sales side, right? But operations in wholesale does have, a thought, if you will, a recommendation. I would always think to focus on 3 to 5 partners that are really solid partners first. It's like the shotgun method, right? I could smatter across a bunch of different trading partners and I could bring them all in at once because revenue, revenue, revenue. But in order to really gauge success, instead of saying yes to everyone, it's really choosing and aligning with partners that you think share your same brand values and also share your customer base. Because if you're doing that, then you're again, you're building that efficacy in the marketplace with people, right? Because that's what your retailers do for you. When your product is in their store, people are like, oh, look, what's this? So it does give you that edge. And then it's about compliance. The word compliance in wholesale is a huge deal, right? You hear that word so much. There has to be, despite having different partners, different requirements, different needs, it's about creating a standardized process for how do we review the routing guides once they come across our desk? What are we looking for? What do we highlight as a potential challenge? How do we work with that? What is the data exchange that they're using? What is the process for chargebacks? How do we want to manage that? Who owns it? I think a lot of the structure within wholesale at well sort of dictates like who is owning what part of the pie, because there's a lot of the pie, right? It's not sort of cut and dry. And then also, as you sort of see all that, it is about reaching out to that account or those partners and saying, we noticed this on our your guide. We don't technically do this. So this is what we need to do instead. Is this okay? Can we get a waiver? You'll hear waivers a lot in wholesale. Can we get a waiver so we don't get a chargeback? That's part of the negotiation, that dance that you're doing with your partners. And ops has a hand in that. Because if you are unable to service your trading partners based on everything that I sort of just touched on, which I could talk about for a really long time, then they become unhappy. And what happens when customers become unhappy with you, whether it's end consumer on DTC or whether it's an account in wholesale? They start putting their open to buy dollars somewhere else. So it's incredibly important to sort of think about that framework. How do you onboard? What's really, really critical? What's crucial? As you grow, what are you willing to update in your tech stack? What do you need to do to continue to scale? Because, not all systems are built equally. If you don't have a great platform that can help you do what you need to do, sometimes, you start to miss. So yeah, I think really thinking about a framework of the demands of EDI and what do you say yes to versus what do you push back on versus when do you negotiate, and then the red flag. When do you say, hey, this is going to be a very tumultuous relationship. There's been some red flags. They don't want to talk about requirements. They don't want to, they're refusing to provide clear documentation. And that's really important, right, in a partnership. It's like any relationship. You want to have clear boundaries. You want to have a clear understanding of what you're being asked to do. So I think that's something that's pretty critical.
So I think something you highlighted there, which is really important, and this is catered to a lot of the ops folks, and I think a lot of ops folks do find themselves in a position where they're having to be reactive after the deal's already signed, or sales has said, okay, we're working with this trading partner, super excited. We got this, they see the dollar signs and they're like, yes, I've now made this sale with no collaboration with ops. And it's almost seemed like ops just has to dance to get it done. And then when they don't, because there are things that clearly were never feasible in the first place, it creates a bit of a dynamic that I've seen play out a few different times. And so I'm curious, what would your advice be to ops leaders who are trying to be helpful and value additive in the initial processes to help get ahead of it. Because to your point, I think you touched on it, good ops and good execution here is what matters for a long-term partnership. If you want to get the recurring open to buy dollars, you've got to make sure you execute on that initial contract. So what would be your advice to ops leaders to actually get them to have that relationship?
I think it's about being honest with your sales team, and talking about there is a decision framework when you think about onboarding a trading partner, even through the lens of sales, right? Um, for ops, we might be thinking about it in terms of, are they requesting industry standard requirements? That's a yes. If that's all they're requesting from you, just a great check. Moving on. Thinking about that account and what revenue they're going to bring to the business, are they going to be a tier one account, right? Are they going to be able to sort of bring the revenue that you're looking for to scale the business? Significant volume potential is a big deal. That's a yes. As an ops leader, if there's a significant, volume potential with an account, you're just going to say yes and figure it out later, because in ops, it's what you do. Sometimes you say yes to things and you're like, oh, I got to fix this. And if they have requirements that you realize over time will enhance your efficiency and will allow you to actually onboard more accounts, I think that's the bigger deal, right? I think that's when you always say yes. And that's the conversation as an operations leader. Those are the conversations that you want to start having with sales. Ingratiating the operational mindset. It's never from a place of no. It's never from a place I don't want to do this. It's from a place of I want this to happen, but this is for your consideration in order for it to happen properly. I think there's the idea of, well, when does an ops leader push back? If there are custom requirements, there's all these trade-offs, right? If there are custom requirements that don't scale to other accounts, whether it be current or future, that's up for discussion. If your costs, so what you're putting in terms of dollars, exceeds maybe like 3%, 4% of the projected annual revenue at that partner, that's up for discussion. If the timeline is unrealistic for implementation, when someone comes to you and says, we're going to do this in 2 weeks, they're an EDI vendor, we're doing it in 2 weeks. I know that's not happening. And so I think, again, it is about being transparent with your teams about the cans, what we will do, what we will strive to do, and what we absolutely cannot hit. I can't onboard an EDI partner in 2 weeks. I know I can't. I've done it. I know how long I need. I need other partners to come in. I have to work with my ERP. I have another EDI platform like SPS or something else that I need to work with, Orderful, who knows. I have to work with the brand itself. There's all these other things to sort of take into account when you need to push back. And I think what's worth negotiating on, if the partner that you're working with is super, super incredibly complex, but boy, oh boy, they're amazing. And you're just like scratching your head about their requirements are so challenging and so difficult, and their timelines are really harsh, but it would be really stupid of us not to partner with them. Like that would be the one that got away, if we're going to look at it like that, right? I think always coming to the table with alternative solutions and saying, I might not be able to do this right now, but I can do this instead, and this is how we can kick this off, and this is what we can do to move the relationship forward. And that really plays into, I might request to ship an EDI vendor manually and do all the work manually and get a waiver to do it for a period of time in order to implement and phase that execution into EDI. I think you have to think about it like that. And so the question is, how do you not be broadsided by sales? You have to build relationships internally just like you do externally. And I'm only as good as all of my relationships, right? Operations cannot be siloed. We have to be able to stretch and bend sometimes, but it's a partnership.
Between like sales and operations, like you talked about a few things there that sound like they need definition, like tier one or tier two, for example. Like, how ready do you find most sales teams are to actually be like, there's a tier 1 and 2 that sales thinks tier 1, 2, and 3, and then there's the operational reality of a tier 1, 2, and 3. Like, how do you go through that calibration process? And kind of, I guess there's some sort, you need to come to an agreement on actually like this is the real definition.
Sure. If you have an EDI trading partner that, again, it just has such significant volume, okay, that's a tier 1, but their requirements, and if we need to onboard them relatively quickly, which, doesn't really happen. I mean, because when you work with an account, you have to think about this. You have to go with all of the requirements, the contracts, what needs to be signed, the redlining. There is time that you do have, right? And as an operator, you should be sitting down with your sales team and you should be having those conversations with business development saying, hey, what does your roadmap look like 12 months out, 6 months out? And this is actually really hard in a startup. I'm not saying this is simple, right? I'm not saying this is add water and stir and have fun with it. No. But I'm saying as an operator, you really need to consider, what does sales and business development roadmap look like? Right. And this is, we touched on a lot of EDI. We haven't talked about if they have a different platform where they're selling their B2B goods, right? Like Shopify. We haven't talked about dropship. We haven't talked about some of those other channels within wholesale that are sort of living, right? So on the Shopify side, you could have 150, accounts just in Shopify alone, right? You could have another 10 dropship accounts, right? You could sort of have this entire sort of, channel within a channel that you have to work with business development and your sales team. So that's why it's really crucial when you sit down and you start planning, who do you want to onboard? What is your 3-year plan? What does, let's say, 2026 look like? Who do we want to bring into the fold? Who are you trying to land? And who's going to be most likely a yes? Who might we have to work on? I think it's about really sort of having those real and really deep conversations about, who do I need to onboard through the lens of operations? What type of onboarding are we considering? Is it EDI? Is it manual? Is it Shopify? Is it an initial dropship relationships where if the dropship goes really, really well, then we might consider to move over to, a true EDI relationship. That actually happens a lot. And Yep, it's like, well, we're not sure. So we're going to go ahead and not take an inventory and, just do an integration via dropship. And if it goes well, then we'll consider it. And that happens really often and way more so now than it ever used to. You're absolutely right. And I think it is really if you aren't having conversations, when you look at wholesale, and I will say this, it's not only sales. Wholesale has an entire arm dedicated to operations to allow the sales team. I always look at operations as a skeleton. It's the structure that holds up what your sales team needs to be doing, right? Like it has to have strength. And that strength comes with foundation. And the foundation is it is one team. And if you aren't allowing your, sales team to grow as an operator because you keep saying no, well, then you're in the wrong business. Because as an operator, you have to say yes. You have to say yes. You can't always say no. You can't always be like, oh, not another one. You have to say, great, I need X amount of time. Can we fit it into this timeline? And it is a back and forth, and it is an ebb and flow. And it's not always perfect.
There's also a balance though, right? Where if you've got sales off, like taking too many of those like dropship deals or doing the wrong kind of deals with the wrong kind of customers, like they're saying yes, 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 but if they keep doing bad deals, they can turn you into busy fools in operations without really thinking through on the right strategy. Have you seen that a lot in the past where people are just, even an individual salesperson's like, if they're struggling, they're just going to take whatever they can because ultimately...
I call it nickel and diming it to a million, right? When you consistently try to nickel and dime your way to revenue and wholesale, that's what happens. You end up having, 200, 300 accounts where maybe 5% of those accounts are like making up the majority of like the fruitful relationships that you may have, and the other ones are just sort of there and they wait for sale. They wait for you to mark down. They sort of have that relationship with you. Similar to D2C, right? Sometimes you have those folks that just wait for the markdowns. Um, but I think that's why the conversation is so important, and that's why the strategy of who do we want to onboard. And I think when you first start out as a wholesaler, it's once you start seeing that revenue, it is a drug, right? Like you go to a trade show and you lock in, $25,000 worth of POs in 2 days. That's a drug, right? You're like, oh, look at all that revenue coming in. But that's not sustainable because then you constantly have to go to trade shows to get those POs, right? And that's why, no, it's not, because you're traveling, you're setting up your booth, you have all these other expenses, right? And you don't know where your next meal is coming from. And that's why wholesale, I think the relationship with wholesale is really interested, because if you have an excellent partner, you know when they're going to place their POs, when their open to buy hits, how those buyers and are actually working with that open to buy, then you have an opportunity to really sort of start to ingratiate yourself with that flow. And then all of a sudden, your business goes from trade shows to 70% pre-books, right? And you have the majority of your partners sending you POs 3 months, 4 months, 5 months out. That's really where you want to go. But that's not overnight, right? None of this is.
It's like a partner. What you described is getting your way into being a true partner and getting
Yeah.
that the opportunity to be treated like a partner rather than just a vendor. And to your point, you have to earn it, and you have to deliver. You have to be consistent. You have to really get there. And I think
Yeah.
that if there's one tagline I will be sharing with anyone who's breaking into wholesale from this podcast, it's that wholesale is not just sales. You really
No.
have to include, because you will turn into a situation where you are nickel and diming to a million, where you are trying to just throw
Yeah.
whatever at a wall because you're going to not deliver
Yep.
until you get this arm moving. And you really have to have that collaboration. I appreciate that framework as someone who's dealt
Yeah.
with people who haven't had that and the
Yeah.
pain they experience when they don't.
You also, wholesale is about patience. You have to have patience, and you have to be able to understand to scale the business. When you find the right partners and you are able to scale, then if you've foundationally built your platform to grow with those partners, they're going to trust you, because they're going to be like, well, yes, they have had chargebacks, but they've come to us. They've said, hey, this is the corrective action that we've taken to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And we trust them. We believe that they're going to be able to ship on time and in full. We believe that they are going to do right by our business.
It's interesting the way you describe that, because it made it clear to me it's so contradictory to the standard D2C operating model, where they are go, go, go fast and iterate. Like, okay, I can blast meta ads, I can turn this on, and they see the results immediately. The feedback loop in D2C is so fast by default. And so when you then break into wholesale, where to your point, it is slower, you won't reap the rewards of that investment. You're just like, you're not going to, the cash flow is slower, the return,
Yeah.
like reorders are slower. You do not know where it's going for a while. And so
Yep.
it is hard to change the mentality of leadership at D2C brands, where they're used to that
Yeah.
fast cycle.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Definitely. I feel like I'm hearing why so many fail. Like they try and go wholesale, and then they're like, oh, we tried wholesale, that didn't work for us. And it's like they've probably leapt into wholesale with the same like mentality as D2C, done those trade shows, signed loads of small things, and then it's all just spiraled out of control. Yeah, and then got turned into like busy fool and run away quick. We're useless at this.
And I think a lot of wholesale is like I said, it's an older part of this business, right? When you think of retail in general, it has some foundation. When you look at a lot of, large retailers, just domestically in the United States, they've been around a really long time. And when you're a multi-vendor, right, you've been there a really long time, and you've seen a lot of brands come and you've seen a lot of brands go. And so this is why, like, it does take time to really think through it's not cut and paste. It's not add water and stir and it's magic. It does take a lot of time. There are critical SOPs that as an organization within wholesale that you have to be able to stand by and you have to be able to like build. Because if you don't, like I talked to our VP of finance a few weeks ago, our controller, and I was like, he's like, yeah, you can sell $100,000 to an account in wholesale, but then you have a $30,000 chargeback. Like, then what's the point? And so this is why, like, yeah, you can sell a ton. Your top line in wholesale might look great once you get going, but if foundationally you're broken through that chain, it's going to come back to haunt you.
How evolved are the use cases for AI around wholesale chargebacks and contracts and that kind of thing? Because that, like, I was just imagining, 100 partners, that's 100 contracts. They probably renew at different points. They've all been stored. You come in and someone's got 100 contracts with 100 wholesalers. You're like, right, I've got to get my arms around what on earth's going on here. Like,
you can use AI and you can say, okay, these are all the contracts that I have, give me the highlights. Right. Like give me the highlights. Let me see where we're currently at. But at the end of the day, a lot of those relations, it's in the fine print. And if you come into a situation, I've been in situations where I've had to throttle wholesale sales. And I've been told, move these units out of wholesale and give them to D2C, because otherwise the D2C business and our in-store business is not going to have enough inventory because we're scaling, but wholesale is going to eat it, right? I've been in those situations multiple times where wholesale will be the winner once you start building those relationships and you're going to markets and you're sort of doing the things that you need to be doing. I think on the flip side of that, it's it can be the exact opposite, right? You can be in a situation where, you don't have wholesale units because they're being eaten up by D2C. And so you sort of have to start thinking through, how do I make this work? And I always tell people, wholesale is not for the faint of heart. It can be a much more difficult assignment than just your plain D2C because of that exact reason. What happens when you have 50 trading partners and you come into an organization and vendor agreements are renewing on a yearly period, but this vendor wants a 2% return allowance, but that vendor wants, to send back their returns, but this vendor only wants to send back damages, but this, you have to, I mean, I won't lie, we have a huge spreadsheet with all of our trading partners and what their terms are and do they do allowances and what those are, and it helps us sort of keep our head on straight, because we have to be able to remember, like, oh wait, something's wrong. I had a situation yesterday, I was like, accounting came to me and said, hey, the terms is wrong with this trading partner, and I said, what do you mean it's wrong? And I looked at EDI, I was like, no, it's this, and then I looked at what was going on, I said, oh, I can fix that. But I didn't see, because things change, platforms change, so things can actually be changed within a platform without you not actually knowing it because you've done something else to it without, understanding the implication of what's going on. And yeah, so I had to fix terms. It happens continuously. I think in wholesale, like just as D2C, if you're in operations, it helps to have a solid tech team behind you if you have it. If you don't, you have to learn, right? You absolutely have to learn how to deal with it.
How do you talked about inventory and inventory getting eaten up either way, like you've got it owned by wholesale that can get eaten by D2C, like do you split your inventory? Like what's your view on that, like shared inventory pools and that kind of thing? Technically behind the scenes that can be a challenge for a lot of companies.
I don't believe in a shared inventory pool. For that exact reason. I've had a shared inventory pool, and over time, it will not work. And there is a reason why it won't work. The ATS, if you have, and see, this is the fun part. If you have a really solid relationship with your trading partners and 80% of your business is pre-books, and you have bulk POs that are in your ERP for those pre-books that have already been placed, and that ATS is eaten up, you can share an inventory pool. You can. But for me, ultimately, over time, I as you grow, the inventory has to be separated to a degree. I think sharing an inventory pool could be very dangerous. Errors happen, right? Your ATS might, there might be a bulk PO that for whatever reason doesn't eat up all of that inventory that's required, and then all of a sudden there's a run on D2C, and then you can't fulfill 50% of that PO. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen. So I'm a big fan of separating them.
When you do a bulk PO, do you handle that in-house, like versus I would imagine like common practice in the UK, often for a lot of wholesale stuff, people just ship it direct to the retail partner and try and avoid any of that like handling and repackaging and all the rest of it.
We handle it. So it's changing. So, right, there's a lot, I think, now where you would bring in those bulk POs into your 3PL, they would receive them into stock, and then eventually, that PO, that start ship flips on and says, oh, this is ready to be, pushed out the door, and, they've asked if they need to, and they ship it out before they cancel. I think we're seeing a lot of direct to store now, and I think that has shifted, right? I still think, and why? These huge, distribution centers that, your potential brands have, they might not want them anymore, right? I mean, it's less handling for them. Why not ship it directly to the store and have that backstock, take that product in and put it out on the floor? Ultimately, I think that does change. Do I foresee a huge change where everything goes direct to store? Not sure. Jury's still out on what that mix will be. I still think there's always going to be a place for bulk POs and orders that need to, hold inventory in the system.
I think we've just seen the dynamic change with these retailers where they have a little more power now. So they'll start you with drop shipping and then they'll put the work on you. Okay, ship it directly to my store. Okay, now maybe you can ship it to my distribution center, but to your point, why would they take on that extra touch? And also a lot of them are focusing on e-com. So a lot of these distribution centers are now changing the way they operate, focusing on shipping orders, not distribution. So there's a lot of dynamic changes that have occurred with these retailers, but due to constraints on their side as well. But I think that unfortunately, the vendors, our merchants, D2C brands, they've borne the brunt of it in that they now have to take on the work. And it's interesting because in the initial wave of D2C, it was very much I have to own the relationship with the brand. I don't want to be in wholesale. It's D2C or die kind of deal. Now we're seeing, obviously, every brand realizes they have to be where the customer is, and they'll take a wholesale account. They want to be where the customer is shopping. And I think that dynamic has now brought the power back to the retailers again, where they see that.
I think, when you look at cost breakdown, D2C versus wholesale, like there is an inherent cost of doing business, whether you're an e-commerce or whether you're doing wholesale, right? There are dollars that are racking up, whether you're in wholesale, you're, markdown dollars, whatever agreements that you have with each trading partner versus what you're spending to, have people to see your ads, on your e-com site, right? So there are dollars and cents that are sort of tied up in either sort of channel to make it work. But, ultimately, I think that in wholesale, as people are, out shopping, there is something about seeing an eye-catching display. I mean, like, oh, what's this product? I haven't seen this before, right? Because you cannot possibly see everything online, right? Even if you are an active social media user, you cannot possibly see everything online. You cannot possibly be served every single ad.
We can't have seen every Ridge ad. Is that what you're saying?
You will not. And I think that that's something that, if you are out, shopping and you see a Ridge wallet and you see a display and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. What's that? I haven't seen that. That is an opportunity for us to potentially grab a different customer.
Yeah.
And I think that that's still alive and well. And I'm wholesale operations. I obviously believe in it, right? I believe in the power of being in a physical store and seeing something that's eye-catching and being like, oh, well, that's really cool.
Like for Ridge breaking into the UK market and growing presence, like you can absolutely see how turning up in the right stores is going to be a game changer for you guys. Because it's still, whilst you've got that viral hook in the US of like you're at the barbecue, I'm like properly going to cliche everyone now. you've all got out your truck, you're at the barbecue, maybe you're at a game with the back of the truck down. That's the thing as well, isn't it? The drive up. So and then you're like, oh, you what's your wallet? And you see it. Like I've not seen many people yet in the UK where you're like, oh, you've got a Ridge wallet, and once that little chain happens, and you start noticing it everywhere. That's where you get that often drives the DTC viral loop, but wholesale is a way to get that sparked off in all these different locations for you.
And I think, at Ridge, we're really lucky. I mean, we have some really great product. The wallets are a great product. People love the wallets, but, people also love the rings. People also love the luggage. People also love our phone cases. Like, going into tech and doing some different things and, bringing out power banks and some other stuff that we're doing. I think there's a real opportunity for Ridge, to sort of, you know, um, be something different to someone else. I've heard, the team say this where people don't realize we sell wallets in some instances. They think we sell rings or they think we sell phone cases, which that's really cool, right? That differentiation and that proliferation of brand and what we are to people. I mean, I think that's pretty
But
interesting.
tying that back to wholesale now, those are entirely different categories, different buyers, totally
They
different
are
relationships. So how
100%.
does that help hurt? How do you in terms of now you guys have new lines, you have tech, you have luggage, like the wallet buyer is not touching any of those things.
The wallet buyer might not be touching those things, but I will say this. If you're already in, engaged with a buyer that's doing like small accessories and leather goods, you're already in. They've
Yeah.
already seen success with the brand, right? They already know what they're in for. So in many instances, if they do have, let's say, another buyer that does more tech related items or another buyer that's doing luggage or however they've broken out their business, that relationship is there. And then the other exciting part is that it also opens you up to be able to be in completely different retailers entirely, right? So it really allows you to sort of just grow and scale in a much different way. It's a totally different lever, right? Like the wallets are super cool. They know the quality they're getting. I mean, they know the warranty that they're getting. They know what they're in for. Oh, shoot, they have, phone cases and they have a MagSafe wallet that works with the phone case. Like that's a zinger, right? That's something that's like, oh, that's really great. I can shop for different people. I can shop for myself. And I just think it's opportunity for sure.
No, that makes a ton of sense. So I know we're coming up on time. We love to do at the end of these sessions kind of quick tactical piece of advice for anyone who is listening. So I think you have such a amazing amount of knowledge about wholesale, and we talked a lot about the collaboration and we dug deep. But I think maybe quick bits of a new D2C merchant who's thinking about getting to wholesale, what are things they should look out for? What's advice you would give to them to maybe avoid some mistakes that you faced?
Um, yeah, that's a really great question. I think in the world of operations, if it's something that you're interested in doing, be vocal about the relationship with the sales team that's bringing on those partners once you start in wholesale. Like, be their partner. Don't hesitate to ask questions of who are they thinking about bringing on and why they want to bring that partner on and what are the requirements. If you're not EDI, I mean, that's a whole other can of worms that you have to think about, right? That's a whole other entirely different set of requirements and platforms and tools and systems. Are you prepared for that? You have to ask, in order to launch an entirely new channel like wholesale, you have to ask a bunch of questions. Do you have a team in place or someone in place that can help you manage through that? What partners do you want to bring on? How many are you considering? So that brings me to this. SOPs are critical, right? So when you think of, okay, I'm onboarding this entirely new partner into a business, what am I doing? I have to gather all the documentation and all the requirements, read them. I know this is like the silliest thing ever. Read the documentation because if you don't, you will not set things up correctly. And it sounds so trite and silly and stupid, but actually reading them helps you. And if you don't want to read them because it's like reading an air conditioning manual, I mean, at least help yourself, put them through AI, get the Cliff Notes, do something, but know what the expectation is. Understand how to test. You have to be able to test. If it's an EDI partner, you have to be able to test not only with your 3PL, right, to ensure that your 3PL, or if it's in-house, whatever you have, can actually ship, but testing in a sandbox environment that allows you to go through the flow. Because there are gremlins that you are going to find. If you have failed documents, what does that mean? How do you troubleshoot them? How do you work through it? So testing protocols for all the transactions that could possibly be required are really important. If you don't understand that, if you don't have a sandbox, get one and set it up as close to your production environment as you can. So when you're running your sandbox tests, it's something that will be mirrored in your production environment. Cannot stress that enough, because if they're really far off and they're not congruent, that could also be another fun challenge for you. Go live checklist, like checklists on, we've done all of these things, we've tested in sandbox, everyone is checked off. Cool, that's great. What happens if it fails? Always have a rollback procedure. Always have a go back to basics procedure if something isn't happening. Set yourself up to go ahead.
On that testing piece, like how do you know where things are going wrong? Like, do you have error reporting set up, that kind of thing, and internal tools monitoring these bits of the systems?
Kind of depends on the partner, right? You may have a testing platform through SPS, right? Where that trading partner leverages SPS as their EDI partner. And you may actually go through a battery of tests that have all the requirements laid out. I mean, the UI is really great. You can see exactly what documents have been tested, exactly why it's failed, rework that needs to be done. And you get to work with an account manager. That's always super helpful. If you don't have that, mirror that, right? If you don't know how to do that, you can Google EDI until the next year. There's so much information just out in the internet about how to do EDI, what you should be looking for. But if you don't have a partner platform that they're using and they're just gonna send you transactions, do your research. You can find a lot of information about what platforms are currently being used, what platform, and everyone has an opinion, right, on what platform is the best, what isn't, how it should work, what it does look like.
We're a little biased, so
everyone's
definitely
biased, right?
Yeah.
Everyone, but I think that there's a lot that can be done in terms of understanding, what's best in class and what's best practice. And obviously, as a new kid on the block, are you going to be best in class right out of the gate? Absolutely not. And you're going to make mistakes and you're going to fumble the ball. But, you do have an opportunity. There's so much information out there. Also, leverage your network. If you're in a business where you're a DTC business and, you want to go into wholesale, is there somebody that that has a wholesale channel? They may not be working, but they may have a colleague. Reach out to your network, ask questions. I've never encountered anyone when I have asked a question through my network or through someone else that hasn't been willing to be well, let me explain to you what we do and how we do it, why we do it. It's really helpful.
It's probably one of the biggest areas. I'm in the SOP community that Parabula run. I don't know if you've made your way in there, Kat, but wholesale and B2B is probably the hottest topic area. Maybe up there with 3PL migration and finding a 3PL, but there's
oh no,
don't even get us started on finding a 3PL that can do EDI requirements. That's when you get the real fun.
I just did that in March. Moving warehouses. Oh yeah, there was a lot that happened earlier this year. We're in a good spot though, but. Yeah, I think asking questions, even asking if you have an ERP, asking your account managers through your ERP, hey, do you have another brand that does this? These are the requirements that I'm being asked to do. Is there someone else that you can point me towards that I can ask some questions? I think you have to remember, like I said, within this role, especially operations, if you've done it 1,000 times before, then it's muscle memory, and you just do it. And it is what it is. Right. But if you've never done something, how do you learn to do something?
Yeah. And I appreciate your collaborative and partnership approach to all of the relationships. Like my team definitely appreciates hearing from you and how we can partner with
I
you
think you're
and where we
lying.
can
You're
go.
lying. They
Uh,
don't. I know they see my name pop up on their screen. They go, "Oh God."
no, but I can actually say without a doubt because you are doing it in a proactive way rather than a reactive way. And you take the approach of wanting to partner and wanting to get ahead of these problems before they become problems rather than, oh, sales assigned this. I need to get this EDI partner live in a week. We get those emails constantly.
I think that's the it's the other hot side of the coin though that's hard to appreciate, which is like whilst you're sitting on your side in operations and you've got a bunch of problem solvers, like the game when you're a vendor or a partner is always to find those people and put them on your side of the fence. So they're sitting, most teams are there just like looking for problems to solve, and it's like matching those two things together. Doesn't mean it's not always going to be smooth sailing and there's going to be like some more hectic moments, but we're all living in this retail calendar, and for some reason stuff that should be done in 8 weeks often needs to be done in 2. So
Yeah.
crunchy deadlines are part of the game, aren't they?
You may quote 8 weeks, and it may take you 12 because of other unforeseen circumstances that were uncovered in the process.
Uh,
I do try and be proactive, and I do like to learn from my partners. I think that's something that having a little bit of humility and being like, I don't actually know how to do this, so I'm gonna ask because I can break it, right? I can try to do it and probably do something wrong, and I'll probably break it, and then I'll have to go back and fix it, which you learn from, by the way. But also, I the opposite, right? Like, hey, I broke something, I had to fix it. So that's one way to do it. But the other way is to rely on your partners that do it every day and that see different circumstances arise within maybe that same problem set that you're encountering. Um, I don't think there's any shame in saying, I don't actually know how to fix this. So if you do, please enlighten me. And that's sort of the approach that I try and take a lot is like, oh, this is a new one. Let me dig in and figure out why this went wrong or where this happened and where the break is. And asking other people can help you out tremendously.
100%. Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Kat, really appreciate your time. And I think this was super beneficial and tactical for any D2C brand, even ones who think they're doing wholesale well. I think that you will learn a lot and learn a lot of how to do it even better. So really appreciate you kind of lending that insight and giving our listeners something to learn.
Cool. Thank you. I really appreciate both your time today. It was fun.